I want to welcome you to our broadcast today. I want to welcome you to our enlightenment broadcast this very evening. Share this very broadcast. You are welcome. You are welcome. You are welcome. I want to welcome you. Permit me to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to you, depending on your time zone. I am Pastor Maxwell Nawihe. I am welcoming you to our segment of Enlightenment broadcast. Today is the 13th day of the month of April 2024. UN slams the Nigerian government, says that there is no legal basis for the detention of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. No legal basis for the detention of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. For those that are joining us for the first time, this enlightenment broadcast has been running for several months, almost 3 months. This enlightenment broadcast that focuses on the judgment of the United Nations, the document of the United Nations, the support of the United Nations to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, and by extension to the Biafran people. Specifically, I'm not talking about all my broadcasts, all my preachings, all my teachings over the years. I am saying this very particular enlightenment broadcast that is dedicated to looking into different aspects, different ingredients of the government of Nigeria, the Kenyan authorities and the government, their role and all that they have done in the course of the extraordinary rendition of Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya to Nigeria, and the judgment of the United Nations, the position of the United Nations, the condemnation of the United Nations in that very regard. That is what the Enlightenment broadcast in that very regard has been addressing for nearly 3 months now. Because those who are saddled with the responsibility to do so, to take it upon themselves, have decided to look the other way. Maybe the thought it is of no essence, it is of no use, it is of no importance, without understanding that their collective silence and docility have to some extent strengthened the continuous incarceration of Nnamdi Kanu and the extended period of his solitary confinement. If they had risen to the responsibility to do the needful, if they had risen to the responsibility to take the bull by the horn, to speak in unison, in corporate efforts, concerted efforts put together to bring to the consciousness or to redirect the focus of the world on this very great judgment and justice that has been given to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu from the global body United Nations, the government of Nigeria would have no other choice than to comply with the rulings and the conditions of the United Nations in this very judgment. And so, in the course of this Enlightenment broadcast, we have been able to shed light in some areas that people didn't quite understand over the years. This judgment is about 3 years old. 2022, between the 30th of March to the 4th of April 2022, this judgment was given, and it was communicated to the government of Nigeria and to the government of Kenya. And they were asked to make it public, to disseminate the very judgment and to comply with it within the space of 6 months, to pay adequate compensation to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and to release him immediately. The government of Nigeria has not complied from the time and the administration of the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, down to this very incumbent administration, which is Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Till today, they have not complied with it. And we know that whether they understand it or believe it or not, whether they comply with it now or later, this is a judgment that has entered into the archives, into the annals of history. This is a judgment that is so indicting, that exposes the illegalities and atrocities that is being committed by these two governments. And the question I've asked in the previous segment of this Enlightenment broadcast is this: why would President Bola Ahmed Tinubu inherit such illegality, such unconstitutionality, such despite or respite, or should I say disdain, spite to the international body, this very United Nations that commands so much influence over the countries of the world? From the United Nations, the Nigerian government has received aid several times. We know about the UNICEF. We know about different groups in the United Nations that has impacted and affected the lives of different citizens of different countries in the times of crisis, terrorism, wars, different kind of natural disasters. And, this country, Nigeria, has benefited so much from the United Nations. And Nigeria has been seeking for a seat to sit at the Security Council of the United Nations. If you want to be given such opportunity to sit at the Security Council, to have a seat at the Security Council of the United Nations, why wouldn't you obey the judgment of the same United Nations? Why wouldn't you comply with their ruling? Simply for the fact It has to do with Nnamdi Kanu. He is an Igbo man. He is seeking for Biafra, which is actually enshrined and guaranteed in the charters of the United Nations, in all the universal declarations of human rights and covenants of the United Nations, domesticated by Nigeria. It is enshrined in the Constitution of Nigeria. United Nations slams the government of Nigeria and says there is no legal basis for the detention of Nnamdi Kanu. And the question is, what then is going on? If it is not legal, it means it is illegal. And if it is illegal, running into 3 years, what is the hope of the common man out there? A common man that cannot be able to afford legal fees. A common man that cannot be able to hire SAN to defend him or her in the court. What is the hope of the common man to get justice from the Nigerian judicial system? I am Pastor Maxwell Onawuhi. If you are just joining us, I welcome you. I am bringing to the screen this very judgment. I am bringing it to the screen immediately. The judgment of the United Nations, which slams the government of Nigeria and says very clearly that there is no legal basis for the detention of Nnamdi Kanu. There is no legal basis. I hope you are still there. We are beginning from the paragraph 81. We have been broadcasting from the top of the very document, the paragraph 1. Today, we are continuing from the paragraph 81. We are continuing from the paragraph 81. As you can see, it is very, very clear on the screen. It is very, very clear right on the screen. Finally, turning to Mr. Kanu's pretrial detention in Nigeria, the working group recalls that according to international human rights law, in particular, Article 9, Section 3 of the Covenant, any person detained while awaiting trial is entitled to trial within a reasonable time, or otherwise shall be released, This is talking about international human rights laws. International human rights laws. Not just, even the Constitution of Nigeria says so. Within 48 hours, But Nnamdi Kanu was detained in a secret and undisclosed location at Kenya for 8 days before his extraordinary rendition to Nigeria. This is according to international human rights laws, that anyone that is detained while awaiting trial is entitled to trial within a reasonable time or otherwise shall be released. Article 14, Section 3C of the Covenant also guarantees the right of anyone charged with a criminal offense to be tried without undue delay. In the absence of a substantive response from the government of Nigeria, the working group finds no legitimate grounds for the delays in the trial of Mr. Kanu, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. That is the United Nations judgment. And this you must understand and embrace it as the truth. John chapter 8, verse 32, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Do you want to be free? Do you want to be free from all the economic woes in Nigeria, from all different kind of bad and retrogressive governments? We have government, but we don't have good governance. You want to be free? Go for the truth. Go for the truth. In the absence of a substantive response from the government of Nigeria, this is what the United Nations is saying. There was no substantive response from the government of Nigeria. No response, substantive, in regard to this very case of Nnamdi Kanu at the United Nations. The working group finds no legitimate grounds for the delays in the trials against Mr. Kanu. I thought that the government have overwhelming evidences against Nnamdi Kanu. I thought they have witnesses. Many people were made to believe that the government is actually fighting against terrorism. Many people were deceived into believing that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was a terrorist, that IPOB is a terrorist organization. Many people were deceived into believing that the government has a legitimate ground. The government has a legal ground to abduct Nnamdi Kanu, to bring him back forcibly from Kenya to Nigeria to face trial. Many people were so happy when they had the news that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has been brought to Nigeria to face trial. Many people were clapping for Muhammadu Buhari. Many people were so elated. They say, at least this our Igbo presidency, we can be able to achieve it. At least Peter Obi can now go to the poll, and he will win under Labour Party, and he will become the sworn-in president of Nigeria. But today, they have all buried their faces and heads in shame. Where is Mr. Peter Obi today? Where is he? Is he in the Aso Rock as the president of Nigeria? Where is Lohane Zendibo that we are championing for the Igbo presidency? And they saw Nnamdi Kanu as a very potent threat that could possibly jeopardize the realization of that very Igbo dream to produce the president of Nigeria. Where are they today? In the absence of substantive response from the government of Nigeria, the working group finds no legitimate grounds for the delays in the trial against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. The trial is still being delayed till the very day, 13th of April, 2024. We have heard the press briefing of the legal team that Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, when you bring together his period of incarceration and trials 2015 to 2017 until today, it is counting 7 years without any substantive ground, without any legitimate ground, without any evidence to convict him. We as a people must learn to embrace the truth. We as a people must learn how to man up, how to be matured enough to come of age, that when the truth stares us in the face, even if it is not our own comfort or doesn't tickle our fancy, we open our arms and embrace it. No legitimate grounds for the delays in the trials of Nnamdi Kanu. So says the United Nations. No legitimate ground. So why are you still holding him in the DSS dungeon in Abuja, Nigeria? And up until now, his heart, we learned that there is the left vertical valve of his heart, which pumps the blood, has been leaking. Has been leaking blood. And you heard in another segment of our broadcast, maybe tomorrow or next, on the 26th of February, as a result of the medications he was subjected to in the detention facility of the DSS. And a lot of other reports as to the state and the condition of his health, especially his heart. He need urgent medical attention. He need to undergo a complex open heart surgery. And that is not in Nigeria. For his survival, he is being held not on a legitimate grounds. His trial is being delayed without any legitimate grounds. He is sick. He need to undergo heart surgery immediately. He is sick. They want him to die. Oh God. May the voice of justice continue to echo. May it continue to reverberate. May it continue to dominate the airspace of the Nigerian government and their broadcasting systems and corporations. That the world may rise to their duty. Men that are circumspect, men that are conscientious, men who stand on the side of the truth, that they may come to the aid of Nnamdi Kanu towards his release. Let's go to the paragraph 82. Consequently, the working group finds that the government of Nigeria failed to establish a legal basis for the detention of Mr. Kanu. The government of Nigeria failed to establish legal basis. They failed. United Nations is saying that the government of Nigeria failed to establish a legal basis for keeping Nnamdi Kanu in the DSS dungeon in Abuja, Nigeria, for taking him to court. From the court of Justice Binta Nyako to the appeal court to the Supreme Court, back to the court of Justice Binta Nyako. That the government of Nigeria has failed to establish a legal basis. A basis that is supported by the law. A background, a justifiable reason or basis that is in accordance to the law which the judiciary is established to interpret. The law of Nigeria, the Constitution of Nigeria. The government of Nigeria failed to establish a legal basis for the detention of Mr. Kanu. His detention is thus arbitrary under Category 1. The working group wishes once again to underscore the collusion between the governments of Kenya and Nigeria in the rendition of Mr. Kanu, and reiterates that both governments bear joint responsibility for any violations of Mr. Kanu's rights in Kenya and Nigeria. Why do people praise and justify injustice? So glaring, so evidential and factual, that this is the case of Nnamdi Kanu. When you hear people talk about Nnamdi Kanu on radio, when you hear them broadcast on radio, when you hear them make all kind of ridiculous, unfounded statements against him, this is the truth. This is the truth that they are dodging and hiding away from, running away from. This is the truth that they have refused to be spread or disseminated through their airwaves and their platforms. This is the truth. Our consciences will continue to condemn us if we keep quiet and if we become mute in the face of apparent injustice against Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and the Biafran people. Consequently, the working group finds that the government of Nigeria failed to establish a legal basis for the detention of Mr. Kanu. His detention is thus arbitrary under Category 1. Why did they fail to establish a legal basis for the detention of Nnamdi Kanu? Because Nnamdi Kanu did not break any law. There is no crime he has committed. If he did, they would have found certain sections of the law and constitution to establish his detention, why he should be detained, why he should be kidnapped from Kenya, why he should be locked away in the DSS dungeon in Abuja, Nigeria, why he should be persecuted, why he should be denied all his rights, why he should not be allowed to undergo the surgery his heart condition needs in order for him to live and to survive to face trial. No legal basis. What a shame. As a result of this, his detention is now categorized as arbitrary. As arbitrary. Not based on the law, but based on the impulse of the government, based on the feeling of the government, not based on the law. And the collusion between the government of Kenya and Nigeria is so ridiculous. They colluded. The working group wishes once again to underscore the collusion between the government of Kenya and Nigeria in the rendition of Mr. Kanu and reiterate that both governments bear joint responsibility for any violations of Mr. Kanu's rights in Kenya and Nigeria. In other words, they should bear the consequences. They should bear the responsibility. Kenya should not excuse themselves from this very responsibility. Nigeria should not ever excuse itself from this same responsibility for the violation of the right of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. They colluded. Collusion. What is collusion? Collusion, an agreement, a secret one at that, to commit an illegal act. That is collusion. To do something that is illegal. That is collusion. They colluded. A secret agreement for an illegal action, for an illegal purpose. A conspiracy. They had a secret agreement to abduct Nnamdi Kanu from Nairobi, Kenya. And the securities of Nigeria worked together with the securities of Kenya. And the deal was done. And when they thought that they have succeeded in what they planned secretly in their collusion, God spoke through the United Nations in condemnation of this very act of illegality, act that does not strengthen the arms of the law in the continent of Africa. Consequently, the working group of the United Nations, that the government of Nigeria failed to establish a legal basis for the detention of Mr. Kanu. His detention is thus arbitrary under Category 1. The working group wishes once again to underscore the collusion between the government of Kenya and Nigeria in the rendition of Mr. Kanu and reiterate that both governments bear joint responsibilities for any violations of Mr. Kanu's rights in Kenya and Nigeria. With this, we are bringing the very segment of the broadcast to an end. I am Pastor Maxwell Nnawihe. When you hear the truth, spread the truth. When you see the truth with overwhelming evidences, align your posture to fit in. Show solidarity to Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. He has not committed any crime. Show support for those of you that can pray for him. Continue to pray for him. If you have been praying for him, keep on praying for him. We just finished praying for him a couple of hours ago. Every Saturday we pray for him. Every blessed Saturday, we have an online platform where we gather to pray for him. Apart from praying for him every Saturday, every blessed day, I lead prayer in which we pray for him. We pray for him every day. And that is why, regardless of all his extraordinary rendition experiences, the torture in the dungeon, all the denial of his fundamental human rights and abuses, God is still protecting him and preserving him. He could have died long ago. He could have died as a result of the torture in Kenya for 8 days, when his whereabouts was not known or made open to the general public, to his family. He could have died in the detention of the state security services. Close to 3 years. It has been prayers. It has been the grace of God. It has been the mercy of God. And with this, we bring this broadcast to an end. God bless you. I remain Pastor Maxwell Nnawihe. Bye-bye.